Hi, I'm James Lopata, and I'm a results leader.
You're listening to ResultsLeader.fm. Being a thought leader is easy. Getting results is hard. This show is for the results leader who lives and dies by their results. Here is your host and Chief Results Leader, Jonathan Rivera.
Yes, y'all. It's time once again for another ResultsLeader.fm. So glad you guys are here. If you're new around here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. So glad to have you. This is the only show on the internet dedicated to results leaders, the men and women who are out there in the front lines getting results for their clients. Today, keynote speaker and transformational coach James Lopata joins us on the show. Let's jump in. James, this has been a long time in the making. Welcome to the show. Are you ready to rock this thing?
Awesome. Totally. Ready to go.
All right. Here's where we give our listeners a quick win. What book have you given most as a gift?
Team of Teams by former General Stanley McChrystal.
Team of Teams. I'm writing that down and adding that to my reading list. Haven't heard that one before, so thank you for that. Now it is story time. So I want you to think back and tell us a story of how an apparent failure set you up for later success.
I was working at Bear Stearns. Talk about failures, right? They triggered the 2008-2009 financial crisis. So I was there 10 years before the crisis, and I was doing well, but I was struggling. And I actually caused quite a ruckus, complaining about lots of things. It could have been a disaster. Eventually, my boss got fired because of a lot of the stuff that I was doing, and it wasn't pretty. But one of the things that made it a real turnaround for me, when I was younger, I was a vice president there and learning how to get ahead in the corporate world. I was on Wall Street. Our headquarters, I was at the headquarters on Park Avenue, and a senior director 4 levels above me took note. She had run a leadership development firm before. She took me through an assessment process and showed me a circle at the end of it with a bunch of dots on one side. Those dots, she said, represent people who work at Bear Stearns. She pointed to a lone little dot on the other side. She said, that's you. You're very different. This doesn't mean we don't need you. It shows why you're struggling, but we really do need you. And she coached me and she taught me how to reach out to others to bring my unique skills. In that particular venue, it was more bringing some of my literary metaphors, theatrical skills. And I had a really turnaround situation where I presented a presentation to stock traders and bond desks around the world about how they can better use the internet. This was in the early internet days. But rather than using a whole bunch of bullets and stupid graphs, within a few seconds, I used a metaphor of the universe and how the universe circles around a single entity, but all relates to each other. I put a little soundtrack behind it. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius, and it was kind of funny. But in a few seconds, they got the metaphor. They understood better than if I had done all that tedious stuff. That's when I started to get promoted, and I began to understand how to bring my own gifts and how to include others in the process. Yeah, that's my success turnaround.
I like that. Let's talk about investments. What would you say is the most worthwhile investment that you have ever made?
The most important investment we can make is our time and energy, and the time and energy and focus and attention. I like to say our most precious asset is not money. It's not even time. It's attention. It's what we attend to. And so the most important thing I've ever invested in is my meditation. I began meditation actually when I was working on Wall Street. I began meditating every day for 30 minutes. And I continue to do that. And I lead a meditation for entrepreneurs every day in the morning. And it's helped me attend. One of the favorite things that Oprah has said, her meditation, she says, helps her resist, which I find a really interesting way to think about meditation. And the way that she looks at it and the way that I look at it is that when I sit and I look at what's really going on, it helps me resist the things that are not important and helps me reorient my focus to those things that are important. So the most important investment I've ever made is in my meditation, in focusing my attention.
How do you know the difference between what's important and what's not important so you know what to resist?
It's by sitting with it, because we bring our brains to so much and we try to figure out our ethics problems are, if I go down one rail track, I kill this many, and we think that we have to make a decision. But what we know is that those who build their character, when they get into a moment like that and people are like, wow, how'd you decide what to do? They're like, I just did the right thing. It was just the right thing to do. So when I sit with other fields of knowing, as one of my coach supervisors talks about, there's the field of knowing in the body, which I don't articulate. And I can feel sensations in me and emotions. And it helps orient me. Even if I can't articulate why one decision may be bad, I can feel the weight and I can say no, even without knowing why. And it helps provide success in my life. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, a fan of meditation. So I definitely like hearing that. Let's think back over the last 5 years. What new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
I think I'm going to go with, I don't know if it could be described as any one of those three, but maybe so just before the pandemic hit, my father had a major stroke. And so when the pandemic hit, he went into a facility to be taken care of. And then we discovered that my mom had a lot of problems with her mind and she couldn't live on her own. So I moved back home because I didn't need to be traveling around in COVID. And I think the change that took place for me over those years, I mean, eventually my dad did pass away and my mom's mind has deteriorated. But it's really something like that can sound really awful. And it was in many ways. But the experience, and I never thought I would be this way, like as a kid, you never think this, but what a gift to really take that extra time to spend with your parents as they're aging and to just be with people who they're getting worse. She started yelling at me and getting upset at me for things that weren't my problem, but just being there in ways that are not requited. I mean, they gave wonderful things to me in life, but it's really deepened my sense about how to connect more deeply with all sorts of people that used to drive me crazy. Like I said, at Bear Stearns, I was a crazy person. Like people really annoyed me and I let them know it. And I don't do that anymore. I appreciate that everyone's coming from a good place. We're all equal. And that approach, that mindset, maybe it's a deeper mindset. It's something I've always known, but to have that mindset really deeply ingrained has been a huge gift.
So we're talking about empathy here and understanding where people are coming from and being a little more patient. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah, and it's even deeper than empathy. It's even when I don't feel the empathy. We talk about emotional intelligence, so it goes back into our brains. And so it's this deeper sense that I don't care who you are. I mean, I can get really upset about people's ideologies and points of view in our day and age, but there's something really, really powerful that makes them no better or worse than I. And that even if they're saying something that is blatantly untrue and a lie, there's a deeper reality that, because I mean, I see this in my own life, when I was a kid, you can lie about something, but it's because you're really emotionally attached to something that's very true. And so I'm able to approach people. I mean, I won't get it. I mean, the details with my mom, the things that she accused me of and such, but to just understand that there's something else going on and that no matter where people are, or if I think they're right or wrong, it doesn't matter. They are beautiful, whole people, and I have no business elevating them or me in any other area, and to richly just approach everything with compassion. So it's a little deeper than empathy, but that is exactly the right direction.
Starting point. Yeah. So let's talk about bad recommendations. What are some bad recommendations you hear in your area of expertise?
I don't know if this is a bad recommendation, but it's a shift in thinking that I've been having lately. And it's in opposition to this idea of leadership. It's kind of a counterintuitive. I've been doing more keynotes on leadership development, particularly systemic leadership development. I do executive coaching. I'm an executive coach supervisor. And there's been such an emphasis on leadership. So I did a little investigation into the history of it. We didn't talk as much about leadership 30, 40 years ago. So at the end of the 1800s, with Frederick Taylor and Ford, management became a big thing. This is when all the business schools were created. 1908, I think, was Harvard Business School and Wharton and all of those. So then we had the rise of if you do a Google search on their book search and you look at the term manager versus leader, and I'll get to the leader part in a moment, but manager begins to take off at the turn of the century. The science of management. How do you manage people? Okay. Then what happened was in the 1960s and 70s, you begin to see manager drop in the book, in the literature, and leader begin to rise. And so in some sense, you could say that the business schools had to repackage management. Management wasn't as sexy anymore. So they called it leadership. Who doesn't want a leader? right? And that's the one thing that everyone can agree on. I don't care about, if you're old or young or what ideology or a political party you're in. Everybody's like, yeah, we need better leadership. But I'm wondering if this rise in leadership makes us all try to be leaders. Like, I'm right, you should follow me. Right? There's all sorts of ways to define leadership. Like, there's this humble servant leadership, etc. But the sense of a leader is essentially somebody that everyone else follows. And I think that there's something not quite right about it. I don't necessarily think it's about followership either. So I'm de-emphasizing leadership because I don't know if that's bad advice, but I think that the way that we initially take that term, and because we emphasize it so much, it's being taken in the wrong way. So I don't know if that's bad advice or not, but I like to shift this to what I'm talking about now is, and Stanley McChrystal talks about this in Team of Teams. I can't recommend Team of Teams enough. It's a new mode of leadership, which is rather than being the type of leader that is the chessboard leader, like everything has to go to the general to get approved, which is how he used to do things, to he uses the metaphor of a leader as a gardener. And I actually like the metaphor of, if you've ever seen, I don't know if you know what a murmuration is. If you've ever seen these videos of starlings in Denmark, like forming these beautiful patterns in the sky, you can look up, do a Google search. But McChrystal talks about he had to radically change the way he led his troops to fight al-Qaeda in Iraq. And he had a big meeting with Rumsfeld and George W. Bush at the time and says, I have to change my whole management structure. We have to go from command and control to align and empower. Those weren't exactly his words. He went to coherence, right? So we can't know everything. He can't know everything, and to empowerment, and that we need joint cognition. And so it's not about the chess master anymore. So I think in some ways, something bad that I think is counterintuitive is this huge emphasis on leadership. And I think we need to think more about how we co-lead. I mean, I am using the term murmurate because it's the best thing I can think of right now. I don't know how helpful that is.
Very. Are you enjoying the interview? Yeah, I had to jump in here for a second and ask you, if you've been listening for a while and you haven't subscribed to this show, why not? Go to wherever you listen to podcasts, type in Results Leader FM, and hit the subscribe button. That way you never miss another episode. Now that we got that out of the way, let's jump back into the interview. Now let's talk about results. Why do results matter?
It's funny, my profession is executive coaching, so the occupational hazard is to ask, well, how would you answer that? Why do results matter? And I might, ask that of your audience to consider for yourself. Why do results matter? Why do we put that emphasis? Just like I asked myself, why does leadership matter? And I began to question it more deeply and see, okay, what type of leadership? And there's co-leadership. There's different ways. So what is it about results? It's a buzzword. Results. I think what's important about results, and I'm going to bring this into a systemic perspective because my real focus is turning now toward systemic change or systems. It's not just individuals. We have a huge emphasis on individual leadership development. I'll give you the example. When I left Bear Stearns, I left shortly after I went through all that coaching because the coaching made me feel really great. But I then realized I could probably fit in other places better. So it did a lot of great stuff for me, but did it help the organization? I like to joke. If they had retained me, could we have not had the Great Recession? It's not just about me, though. It's about this fact that this emphasis on one-on-one leadership development, me, the individual, is creating the Great Resignation. People are like, I can do better elsewhere. What's it doing for our organizations and for society? So when we talk about, I'm more focused on how do we leverage one-on-one or individual leadership development for the benefit of all stakeholders. And this leads to your question about results. Because in classic systems theory, there's three parts to a system. There are the individual parts, which we often think of as people or elements within it. Then there's the relationships between them, which are spoken or unspoken. And then there's the results, the outcomes we get. And it's very easy to think we just replace people, just get a new leader or whatever. But if you think about it, we have replaced at the top of the US government, we have gone from one full party running things to another full party. And yet we still have the same results of division. And so the harder part is the relationships, the space between. Why do results matter? Because we have to identify not only results that we say that we want, So I'm working with John Deere and SpaceX right now and some other larger systemic coaching engagements. So we want to get clear on the results we are getting. Are we losing diversity? Are we really working in harmonious ways or not? Not the stated results that we want. And then we have to get away from focusing on people. And there's a lot of new research that's trying to figure out, okay, the spaces between. I can say Jennifer has exceeded in terms of getting better with her executive presence. But what is that doing for the organization? So we want to begin to measure conversations between. We want to begin to see the results that we're getting, results we want, and then we have to go deeper into organizational beliefs, organizational assumptions, and look at the culture.
I felt it coming. I felt culture was going to come up there somewhere. System. That's the system, I think, from what I'm hearing from you. So let's talk about you. What area of your business would you like better results?
I love my business. I love my work. Let me just put that out there. I mean, we're always growing. I mean, that's the beauty of it, is being adaptable. I mean, that's another thing McChrystal talks about. The Army had to move from efficiency to adaptability. Al-Qaeda was not efficient. They were effective because they were adaptable. And so he had to shift away from efficiency. In terms of the results that I want to get out of my business more, I mean, I'm trending in the right direction in terms of I'm making more of an impact. I'm connecting with the people that you connect with. I just mentioned how people that aren't that important, but the people you connect with are, and how you connect with them. And if there's anything I'm getting better at recently, it's connecting with amazing people who want stronger connections, want to make more impactful change in more powerful ways. And those are the results that I want to begin to see more.
What results are you most proud of?
I think one of the biggest, I'll go back a ways, when I was working at Citibank, and when I rolled out their first digital information system for sharing stock information. I'm dating myself. We were working in 60 different countries, and people were just, in terms of the market information we were getting from all these different markets, it was just being faxed to our clients, to each other in totally different formats. And so I helped, and we had, I don't know how many trillions of dollars were under management in all this, because we were working with all the major banks. I was at 111 Wall Street, right on Wall Street. And we were doing, at that time, it was Worldwide Security Services. I think they rebranded as Global Security Services. And it was the ability to work with these 60 different countries and with the technology people, the business people, and to begin to consolidate it all into one system whereby people got the stuff that they needed. It was in the ways that they needed it in a more consistent manner, that put together some and we had to go through legal, we had to go through marketing, we had to go through technology, and through radically different types of company structures. And that had a large impact. I mean, Citibank is huge. I mean, their Worldwide Security Services were servicing many of the largest banks out there in the areas that they were doing this in. And I look at that as a model for the type of work that I want to be doing now as I begin to work in larger systems, to begin to create ways that people can feel empowered. That was part of the internet analogy that I had with the solar system, is that individual planets have their own power, but they all power each other together. And we have to get away from the Frederick Taylor, Ford, where you don't need to know the whole system. You just we want you to bring your brain to work. And companies that don't allow people to bring their brains and creativity to work in more powerful ways within a coherent structure are going to be left by the wayside. And so that was my first kind of real success on that on a huge level. And I use that as a model for how I think about moving forward.
Any parting thoughts you want to share with the results leaders who are listening to us right now?
I think it's really important to always ask the question, so what? I've been working with a lot of folks in different organizations that are trying to make this change to a more gardener approach to leadership. And it's very easy for larger bureaucracy, which literally translates as the rule of desks, to move from doing things right, filling out this paperwork, to doing the right thing. And so when you think about results that matter. And before you move forward with anything, it's like, okay, great. So what? So what's this really going to get us? Where's this really going to go? Keep asking yourself and those around you that question. And it's really powerful.
I dig it, man. So I know the listeners are going to want more from you. Where can they get it?
Where can they get it? First of all, I love talking to people. So please reach out, because that's how I learn, by talking to others. So probably the best email I'm going to give you my James at Murmurate, MURMERATE.com. James at Murmurate.com. That is my new mission, is to help us all murmurate in beautiful, glorious patterns together in joint cognition, flying around the world for fun.
Let's do it, man. I dig it. Thank you, James, for hanging out with us. Thank you, results leaders, for tuning in. Another episode is in the can. That is a wrap for another edition of resultsleader.fm. If you are out there getting results for your clients and you want to be featured on the show, go to resultsleader.fm now and apply to be on the show. And if you love what you're hearing, share the show, give us a rating and review, do anything to help us get the message out there. Thought leadership is easy, but results leadership is hard. We'll catch you on the next one.
This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.